Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Busy show for you tonight. Nuclear weapons testing, etc., etc. I'm going to start off with a new song by James Lucid. Links are in the description for it. 1957. It's excellent. You can call in these live shows, 709-740-4076. I'm going to jump into the song. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Where Fukushima was fine. JFK got in the way. Nuclear industry can't delay. No term could steer, no rule could stall. It rolled ahead, it rolled through all. 1957 cleared the way. JFK got in the way.
Awesome. JFK got in the way. That was brilliant, eh? Loving it. Grooving to it today. All right. Welcome to the madness. Here we go. Indeed is madness. You'll see in a couple of minutes. About 2 minutes. Pretty disappointing madness. And you can find that song at James Lucid's site. It's in the description. There's a link to it. If you're watching this later, you won't see that link for 12 hours after the video is posted. And so get yourself on down into the description. You'll find it. A link to that site. It's the most recent song. Trump's testing plans for U.S. nuclear weapons won't include explosions, Energy Secretary says. Well, they've been doing that all along, in that case. So So we covered this on our last show, right? Nuclear testing. We went way down that rabbit hole too, of the worldwide. It's a great show, actually. Will not include nuclear explosions, the Energy Secretary says. Not everybody agrees with that. The perpetually wacko John Bolton, lunatic. Nuclear testing on U.S. soil would be underground, says John Bolton, so they can't make up their mind. There's going to be no test? No, it'll be underground. What does he know? That? And he's been around a lot longer than the Energy Secretary, right? And so... and all the underground testing was equal. Everything cracked the earth open and it vented at incredible speeds. It's like 10,000 miles per hour type speeds. So if you go back and look at the videos of the 1950s and 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, that's when we had the nuclear war on Earth, as people in the future will... Because the nuclear weapons are the same bombs, the same radioactive fallout. Just because you didn't do it in anger, blow up cities, though, even though you did blow up cities of marine life, the nurseries, the Christmas Island, the Marshall Islands, the Montebellos, the French Polynesians, all these tropical paradises, you blew up them. That was a war. What right did they have to destroy the nursery of planet Earth, I wonder? Should we stop letting Japan and the nuclear industry murder our planet with radioactive fallout? I think that's a legitimate poll. It's probably the best poll I've ever had on top of that. And I've got some pretty amazing polls. My polls are worthy of a book, of a storybook of just polls. And on this site, you're looking at close to 1,000 polls. And it really gives you just the polls. If you were just to look at, if you had a picture book of all the polls we've done, that would educate you more than going to university for 3 years on nuclear. Well, so Crazy Bolton, who's very connected, is saying there is going to be underground testing, but his view of testing is all about safety, which is absurdness. It's like having 5,000 cars in a parking lot, Dementia Bolton said. They better not ignite before you're ready to turn them on. Like, what the goodness gracious is he talking about? You can't conflate automobiles with radioactive fallout that poisons the entire planet within about 30 days. Right? You can't, there's no comparisons. But that's nuclear. Nothing makes sense in nuclear, does it? We've been covering that for 24 years. My backup site, Dana Durnford on BitChute, doesn't exist anymore. To my absolute horror yesterday. I'm still pretty shook by it. It was actually, well, my name on it was Dana Durnford. It was 578 videos. They're gone. It was over, I guess it's around 1,100 videos on that site of me. That site was over 5 years old. Predated the current YouTube channel we're looking at. And so they scrubbed me off the internet. They're scrubbing me off the internet. And you'll see why tonight, unfortunately. I'm not a bad person. I don't deserve to. My last YouTube channel, they took down 1,500 of these presentations when I was out researching spiders. It was 400 miles out into the woods. The spiders are missing. So this is a picture of a bronze whale. This was 2023. So recently there was another bronze whale that washed up on the beach. That's emaciated, by the way. Starved to death. But this is one from about 8 days ago. Would you know that this was a bronze whale if you didn't see this other one? And we've seen we cover a lot of emaciated whales on this site, and seabirds, etc., post-Fukushima radioactive fallout breaking the food chain. This is another dead whale, October the 30th, a few days ago. This is a severe emaciated humpback whale. There's over 7,000 humpback whales died, were discovered using AI because they've never showed up again. And there was already an unusual mortality event. One thing all the die-off has in common is starvation. You see, it drowned it in the shark's net. It was already dead. Look at it. This one dead. It's emaciated. It didn't become. It takes months and months and months to be emaciated. So that happened long before it got to the net. A migrating whale. Well, if you look at it now, all the humpback whales are emaciated. All the killer whales are showing up emaciated too. Peanut heads, shoulder blades clearly visible, the rib cage clearly visible, the tail is so emaciated, I don't even know how to describe it. That's absurd to be that skinny. This animal looks like it's deflated rather. That's in Belgium 2023. In New Zealand this year, June, we have another emaciated killer whale. And it's clear emaciation, even though almost all the stories called it a healthy whale. But this, anybody that knows what you're looking at knows clearly this is not a healthy whale. And you can tell it by the tail and the peanut head. They're very careful, very select photos. Fortunately enough, they were clean enough I can zoom in and be able to extrapolate enough information to quantify it. And you can see the peanut head, if you know what you're looking for, as clear as you can see the peanut head here. So my backup channel is gone. I got no idea why. Okay, so this is Fukushima. When you see pictures like this, this is Fukushima. They're claiming that's 50 millisieverts at a nuclear meltdown where you ejected the reactor cores right out of the buildings. And from the fuel pools, which had around 8 reactor cores all over the site. And so anybody that stood up there is a homeless or a destitute or a victim of society or the immigrants that don't speak the language. These are not nuclear scientists, nuclear academics. This is not Bechtel. This is not nuclear corporations. This is not nuclear universities, alumni from the institutions. These are the victims of society. That's the only people that are going to who don't understand anything about nuclear. That's the only way you're going to get somebody. And the green region you're seeing right here is very important. That's a region they spray to bind with the fuel particulates that are splitting atoms, to try to lower the airborne down enough they can send in the homeless and see where they drop dead, and so then they can quantify the worst areas. And that's exactly what they had done. They were sending in homeless in paper suits, not even Tyvek, because they are so irradiated you can never retrieve them just with the remote control excavators, and then they're incinerated. And the ashes are given to a monastery. We know there was at one point, 2015, there was 800 urns, funeral urns with the ashes of the homeless and the destitute and the victims. And they're unknown. There was no names with them. The people that had worked at Fukushima in the early years, and still are, the homeless and the destitute, the victims of society. And it tells you a lot about this industry, how much contempt it has. So Fukushima decommissioned, this is not a very long story, but we're going to cover it. A saga of challenges and triumphs. Dive into the complexities of decommissioning Fukushima Daiichi as Japan balances nuclear energy with public concern, international expectations. Okay. The table of contents was quite big. And my takeaway from this story was desperation. The nuclear is desperated. It's very desperate to get some kind of acceptance from anybody, anywhere, anything, It seems like what we do with these shows is we try to challenge blatant lies. And we'll provide you with information to counter that and move on to the next lie and the next story and the next story. And then it's always, oh, they told a lie here, so let's just cover that sentence or cut paragraphs or whatever, right? So, and a lot of times you can move through a hell of a lot of stories. So when you talk about the complexities of decommissioning Fukushima Daiichi, they conveniently left out, actually omitted purposely, an awful lot. We're going to try to rectify some of that. So when you see this green regions, this is a no man's land. So whoever stood up there with a camera in their hand died that day. If you see somebody there and a paper shows they died that day, or sometimes within an hour or 20 minutes, these were the sacrificed for the industry. The industry's not going in there. This was a picture they showed you, the complexities of the Fukushima. Introduction to Japan's nuclear energy policy, and they show you this bizarre AI picture. I'll show you the real pictures that were released. And you see these types of pictures. These are pictures that were released by TEPCO. And they tell a different story. So this is not a nuclear scientist or a nuclear engineer or an engineer or an academic, or this is a homeless or destitute, a victim of society, immigrant who don't speak the language. Somebody has no concept of nuclear. That's the only people you would have coerced into going in there, and you would have offered him a lot of money. He probably got offered $2,000 to go over there and do that, because he knew at the end of the day he wouldn't be alive to collect the $2,000, and that's not unusual for them to be doing that, right? There's a lot. We've been covering this since it happened, and so we're going to take you into a deep dive full of madness and pictures and documentation and facts. Nothing but facts. There's no conjectures, unfortunately, no opinions. I'm not allowed to have an opinion. I'm not even allowed to have videos on BitChute, like here apparently. I just lost 1,100 of these presentations. I have any idea how much work that was for me, how much heart I put in all of that. The wake of the 2011 Fukushima Daiichi disaster, the catastrophic event prompted a nationwide reevaluation of nuclear safety standards and led to the shutdown of many reactors across the country. Catastrophic event. Well, that's nice of them. According to the media, though, it's not a catastrophic event. According to the media, they're at the top of that building to your left, Reactor 4, and they got all the reactor cores, 8 of them, out of the fuel pool. Well, they didn't even acknowledge that. 1,500 assemblies. Each assembly is 1,800 pounds. The building doesn't even exist. The picture to your left is 2012. This picture is 2013. The buildings were 190 feet, 65 meter, 19-story buildings, 150 feet wide. And as you can see in this particular, this is completely washed out of the conversation. The official story is here. This is ABC Australia, the biggest media in Australia, the biggest media in Europe, the BBC, the biggest media in North America, CBS. And they're just some of the medias that made these assertions. There happens to be 70 identical reactors. The identical colors, the schematics, the designs, the floor plans are identical of these reactors in Fukushima. Boiling water 1 reactors are in the United States. Ernie Gunnarsson made the fuel assemblies, racks for the fuel assemblies, rather. So the racks he made for 70 identical reactors are in the fuel pool at the top of these buildings. The fuel pool at the very top, you can see, almost see the top of the buildings right here. And where they're high up above the fuel pool, they're at the very, very top of the building. So they're at about 170 feet. There's about 20 feet left over their head, 25 feet maybe. Low carbon energy, really. Nuclear. Oh my goodness. The most resource intensive industry on the planet is the nuclear industry. Every nuclear power plant has 2 dedicated gas, oil, or coal plants to them. Dedicated. The amount of energy, think about how much energy you got to use to get water to just one of the reactors on site. So they need 1 million gallons, 4,500 tons each minute. It's equal to 6,450 one-ton pickup trucks of water each 24 hours. goes through the reactor, each reactor. Not just one, not the whole site, but just each reactor. So think about how much energy it takes to move a row of traffic around the planet, bumper to bumper, of water and dump it into the reactor in 24 hours. So say you got trucks are pre-filled up, you got a wrapped 6,450,000 trucks wrapped around the planet, 1-ton trucks with 1,000 liters in the back of each of them, 2,200 pounds in the back of each of them. That's how much energy you're going to put out for each of the 6 reactors. So multiply that by 6. And so you think you can do that with a generator? Well, you're wrong. You need 2 dedicated gas, oil, and coal plants. Just get rid of the nuclear reactor and use the gas, oil, and coal plants to pump the water, because that's who's doing it in the first place. Get rid of the infrastructure to support the nuclear industry, which supports 1 million companies, which is absurd unless you've got to have that kind of... I mean, geothermal actually exists. You refuse to acknowledge it. Low carbon energy. This is Neptunium-239 dispersal that covers North America. No, this covers the whole planet. The model is of the entire planet, not North America. And that's in 20 days up there of Neptunium-239. That decays to plutonium-239 every 2.5 days. There's 10 decays. So 25 days it all decayed. That plume is now got a 24,000-year half-life. And plutonium was named after the devil. You'll get 3 tumors, the skeleton, the lung, and the liver. And that's the severity of the dying is 80% will die from skeleton tumors. This is a terrible way to die. If you're a kid with this in your bones, or an animal, or a mammal, or an insect, or you're producing, well, not insect, I guess, but you're producing radioactive stem cells for your developing life for the species. Because we don't produce as much as the species do. All the species produce babies, but not all humans are producing babies. You might only be 1 or 2, right? But with the animal kingdom, they're producing multiple species each year. And the females are the most vulnerable. I mean, this plume is this is a quantified plume based on sketchy, like it's not based up on reactor 4, for instance, inventories that were lost. The reactors need, did I mention the reactor needs 1 million gallons a minute to stay cool? These things pump 300 tons a day. The reactor needs 4,500 tons each minute. And that they're on the seaward side of the turbine buildings. They shouldn't even be there. And this is the police department from Tokyo, by the way, Metropolitan Tokyo, who know nothing about radiation. The heroes that stayed on site that were sacrificed, because the reactors all melted down in 5 days. We lost the inventories of all the fuel pools in 5 days. The damage was done, and the emissions were released into the biosphere, and all the oceans, all the fresh water, all the land mass in 30 days was buried under huge numbers. I'll show you that coming up, by the way. Public distrust was further exasperated by past management failures by TEPCO. Well, TEPCO is not a decommissioned authority. TEPCO shouldn't have been playing any part on it. They were nationalized because they went bankrupt right away. Their stocks never plummeted, they crashed. And we've never seen stocks crash like that before. Public trust was further exasperated by the past management. Why was TEPCO left in charge? Why didn't the designers, the builders, put in charge? So if your car breaks down, do you take it to a garage, or do you go out and you don't know nothing about a car? Will you go out and buy all the tools and fix it yourself? No. Why would something so complicated as a reactor be left to an operator and not a engineering firm that created it? So you can't blame the nuclear industry, you blame TEPCO. And I'll probably fall for it again myself tonight. I do it all the time. Radiation levels of several dozens of sieverts near Reactor 2, for instance. Reactor 2 was the only one that didn't look completely destroyed, and I'll show you all the reactors coming up. Reactor was 2 was right between reactor 1 and 3. Let me just bring up a picture because I don't have to do too many. I got everything preloaded, I think. I got that new song now running through my head. That's a cool thing, man. That helps. It really does. Yeah, it's such a weird story, unfortunately. I don't know why I don't have that picture up front and center. Just bear with me. Here we go. So that's reactor 2. Reactor 1 has lost its entire inventory. Reactor 3 lost its entire inventory, which is up to a total of 36 reactor cores lost. Each building produces around 5 3/4 reactor cores in the fuel pools every decade. It takes a long time before you can move them out, and typically to move them across the street from reactor 4 to what's known as the common spent fuel pool, which, by the way, its pictures were redacted in a release on the 10th anniversary that nobody's ever covered, only me for some reason. I'll just show you a picture of that just to, you can wrap your mind around it, hopefully. Here we go. I'm going to show you a reactor, the common span fuel pool, which is across the street from reactor 3 and 4. Well, 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're all 1, 2, and 3, 4 are all together, but right across the street from reactor 4. That's reactor 4. Is the common spent fuel pool that's up there in the, almost the top center. Why is that redacted? By the way, that's low. That's on the same street as the tsunami ran through the other reactors. So it got ran through too. And it has windows on that side. So those windows 100% would have been breached. And if you don't circulate the water in a fuel pool, let alone a common spent fuel pool that's stacked, it starts to melt down. It loses integrity, starts to break apart, becomes so toxic. And after a couple of days, you expect to lose the inventories, which is apparently what happened. Why else would you pixelate the entire building and the nearby property of it? And why were these pictures released with no... I found it on a Chinese news story about Fukushima that I had translated, and there was links to 736, what I call mystery pictures. And I've done a video this year of 736 mystery pictures. You can find that and watch it. I go through all these pictures for you and try to give you some context. In the background, in the back of it, like it's a wall, and these are transport truck containers stacked up in the background. Kind of gives you some context of the tsunami must have went in there for that to happen, right? Okay, let's come back to the story. And we've seen the same thing with reactor 6, by the way. It was pixelated out too. And another site, northeast or southeast, was pixelated out also. So let me find out reactor 6, maybe. Here, I got it. I've been under siege for a long time, and I'm not the bad guy, for being honest. See, it's hard to comprehend. Well, you can see the drums that stayed there, the atmospheric pressure as the water rolled up, devastated those drums. So when you zoom in, though, reactor 6 and the turbine building is completely pixelated out. Why would you do that? Why were these pictures released on the 10th year anniversary, that January of that year? And why am I the only person on the planet that's ever covered these pictures? So the common spent fuel pool was pixelated completely out. and reactor 6 is completely pixelated out. It'd be prudent to include that in any assessments, I would hope, for anybody that want to be realistic. That has to be, you can say, okay, well, nothing happened, but, we can't quantify that assertion. And so we have to assume there was inventories lost out of these reactor buildings. And Chernobyl was a graphite reactor, it was a small reactor, it was a new reactor, it was a graphite reactor. These are pure uranium, pure plutonium, and they're huge reactor buildings, huge inventories in the reactor cores. And so because of those particular attributes, they're about a 100-to-1 ratio for each building of Chernobyl's. And Chernobyl was brutal. They closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom. Nonetheless, there's a segment of the population that acknowledges the necessity of nuclear energy in reducing carbon emissions. Yeah, like me and you and the homeless, I guess. This person would have died that day. There's nobody in the nuclear industry who would have took this job. This is shortly after the nuclear meltdown. The green, whenever you see that green, that's the regions. That means you're in hell. And so when you tell someone in a paper suit to go up alongside these nasty gamma shines, neutron bombardments, and I mean, that is there because the reactor is ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right out of the building. So imagine what fell down on this site. And these we're talking about 4 reactors side by side losing their entire inventories. It's like the danger we're talking about is absurd. This dual perspective reflects the broader international debate on the role of nuclear energy in achieving climate goal. The Xenon-133 will travel with 1,000 other isotopes, by the way. So when Xenon-133 was at 450,000 times above detection levels, persisted for weeks, it was a continuous plume, is what they're talking about, persisted for weeks. No, it covered the whole planet by April the 7th. All the studies from all the major shakers and movers are making those assertions. The government emphasized investing in next-generation nuclear technology, which doesn't exist. Well, Canada's going to build the first small modular reactor, right? It's 240 feet tall. It's 50 feet taller than Fukushima's buildings, massive reactors. It's a 24-story building. They're going to put half of it underground. That's not a small modular reactor at all. And it's massive. And it's only going to produce 300 megawatts, maybe, if you use plutonium mixed oxide fuel. And you can see what plutonium mixed oxide fuel does when it's, my goodness. Ignore reality for what? What's the purpose of that? Covering up Fukushima, you have the same gigawatts of nuclear now as you had in the 90s. So, but you don't have, we gave you all the money you ever wanted. We gave you all the kids in the university you ever wanted. We gave you the best of the best resources and precious metals and real estate. We gave you everything you ever wanted, and you still can't produce a nuclear renaissance. And you're not even trying. You're just robbing blind and delaying the renewable. Last year, just solar was 660 gigawatts, which is almost double the capacity of all of nuclear for 80 years. In just 12 months was brought online. This year, they expect a 40% increase over that. You can't quantify that it has rigorous safety protocols when it doesn't even exist. You got to put 2 million pieces of paper into the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They need to hire 400 or 500 people to flush through that. The engineers have to redesign over and over any new designs like this. They don't have a small modular reactor, or Canada wouldn't be building a 240-foot skyscraper. It would be building a small modular reactor, right? If they had it, that's what we'd be building. We wouldn't be building skyscrapers and saying they're small modular reactors, which is definitely a sign of mental illness. And the fact that they don't have it's acknowledgement they don't have a wait a couple of years and build one, see? They're not even going to get there. It's a posturing. They're not even building it because it's a skyscraper. Yeah, they're plowing land and allegedly doing it, they have over 100 nuclear plants that've done the same too and didn't come to fruition. It's highly suspect this one will. And why are you doing that? Like when you can do geothermal, the technology like Quatsi Electric is just one of many technology companies that have mastered, but they don't have any support. We're throwing billions and billions and billions a year at the fusion, billions and billions a year at the fabled small modular reactor. You have better chances of encountering a unicorn than you are of actually a small modular reactor in your future. But they're going to set off nuclear bombs in North America. I don't see that coming to fruition. I mean, John Bolton saying they're going to do underground is pretty bizarre. Enforced by the Nuclear Regulation Authority, the rubber stamp guys. These are the ghouls of the nuclear industry that gets that job. They're there for 4 years, and their job is make sure the nuclear industry doesn't have any issues. It gets everything it ever dreamed of. And they're just the guys who pay off Congress and Senates and parliamentarians. They're not like none of these nuclear scientists. The nuclear regulation authorities are not the people in these pictures. Okay, they don't go to Fukushima. This guy died that day for sure. Not maybe, not perhaps, not almost. And the Geiger counters in millisieverts at a nuclear meltdown site where you ejected the reactor core all over the site is absurd. To suggest that it's millisieverts is absurd. We know outside of reactor 1 it was over 1 million sieverts. 3 sieverts will melt your organs. So imagine the guy on the radio saying, a little closer, a little closer. As reported by the Climate Scorecard, there's heavy context that nuclear is somehow the great savior for the climate, which is the reason, like, you see what you're looking at here, it started, the plume March the 18th is already covering the Pacific, Alaska, the East, Canada, and a lot of the eastern seaboard, right, down to Mexico. By March the 22nd, North America is literally buried. March the 25th, the whole planet is almost buried. By April the 7th, the entire planet is buried on a cesium-137, for instance, right? And it can't travel by itself. So think of a snowstorm that comes out of Japan over 30 days. In this case here, 36 days. You have invisible, but you have a snowstorm that in 36 days covers the whole planet. The snow never melts, and it never stops snowing. Well, take the word snow editor and put in the word radiation, and then you're being honest. Now, all the radiation we created is still out there pulsing energy at the speed of light worldwide. And the releases just from 1,000 fuel pools worldwide is we don't need nuclear meltdowns. We don't need nuclear accidents or nuclear dumping or the Manhattan legacy or anything else to kill this planet. We just need nuclear fuel pools with no containment, splitting atoms from millions of homes and businesses into the ecosystem that happen to be, I'm sure it's a coincidence, every nuclear power plant except for a couple are surrounded by farms as far as you can see from a satellite. I'm pretty sure that's a coincidence. They wouldn't poison you, would they? They wouldn't do that to you. You better think again. So the furthest row over there is communities in Japan that they didn't abandon. And the next row, population 2010, or this happened in 2011, you can see the population. Fukushima City, 296,000 people, for instance. And the average disposition of the cesium-137, because apparently according to Japan, the nuclear industry, no other isotopes exist, 195 would be an evacuation zone, like the age of a turtle, an old turtle. 229,000 atoms per square meter is supposed to be an evacuation zone forever, right? These are absurd numbers. And you can't just have cesium-1. For every cesium-137, there's 100 strontium-90 produced. Current status of Fukushima Daiichi Decommissioning. As of now, the decommissioning of Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant is progressing at a slow pace. Schizophrenics, eh? That's what it reminds me of when I hear stuff like that. You're schizophrenic suggests you're decommissioning something that was lost right away. How does that work? When you ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools of reactor 3 right out of the buildings, the word decommissioning is no longer appropriate. Right? It has no, it's not valid. It's not, like when you look at this picture, the buildings, the reactor cores and the fuel pools, at the top of each of the building was around 8 reactor cores to 9 reactor cores. Well, there's 9 in each of the buildings. This one, the extra one was in the fuel pool at the top of the building. That doesn't exist. And reactor 3 to your left, you can see how it's sprayed with regions to green. The fuel pool's reactor cores are gone. This was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor that should never exist, because its releases into the environment just to create it are unconscionable. The emissions from a fuel pool are 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. And when the insects and birds and mammals and animals and humans and whales and millions of beautiful species ingest this or consume it or drink it, the factor is multiplied by 1 trillion, because it wrecks their chromosomes, your DNA, their cells every second. Your body attacks it with white blood cells, try to repair it every second, can't keep up with that. Per atom, wrap your mind around that statement. And at the same, like cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet, for goodness sakes. And by the way, the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods is curium isotopes, not cesium, not xenon. Curium isotope, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. It's a bone seeker. Primarily due to technical challenges. These are not challenges, this is simply genocide and murder. And this is in millisieverts. So suggesting it's around 8 millisieverts at a nuclear meltdown is equivalent of being a monster. You have to be a monster to do stuff like that. So they're given fake Geiger counters that are pointless. By the way, when you expose a Geiger counter, and mine should be up in the corner. When you expose a Geiger counter to high radiation doses, it breaks. You have to send it back to the factory to be recalibrated. So there's nowhere on that site that's not going to break. Right? Yoshi Shimatsu, the former editor of Japan Times, I'd done a radio show with him for 2 years on Sundays if I wasn't out doing research expeditions, which I'd done for 4 to 5 months a year on the Pacific Ocean for 6 years. He rode in there on a bicycle into the Fukushima no-go zones, like I think it was Fudabar. And he had 3 Geiger counters. All 3 of them broke. He was on his bicycle. He wasn't at ground zero. He was in the community next to it, which is the same thing, I guess. But all 3 of his Geiger counters broke, and a week later, most of his teeth fell out. And high radiation levels, really. We don't really hear that acknowledgement very often. So they're saying this is 2 millisieverts. They're not spraying regions for 2 millisieverts, okay? Did I mention the reactor ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right out of the building, back down on top of the building? Let me just show you that explosion, actually. Just for badness. I'll show you some pictures from my research expeditions a little later. So let's look at the explosion. So you can see it here. This is a really good, but let's watch the video. This is reactor 3. It's a very short clip. I think it's reactor 3. Yeah, that's reactor 3. Slow motion. What you're going to see, this is a 190-foot building. You're going to see the big chunks falling back down quickly. That's the fuel pool in the reactor cores. That's around 9 massive reactor cores plummeting back to Earth. This plume is fuel particulates. And so these particulates are replicating. They're splitting atoms. So nuclear is the only perpetual machine we have on the planet. The fuel is splitting atoms forever. Reactor 1 done the same thing. Now, we know Reactor 4 done the same thing, but they have never released a video. They refuse to acknowledge that it blew up even. That's Reactor 1 blowing up. That wasn't a hydrogen explosions, by the way. These are pressurized explosions. The reactors are already at 1,000 pounds per square inch before this, when they're running. And so, you need 4,500 tons of water a minute to remain cool. What do you think happens with all that heat? The pressure builds, right? These were pressure explosions. And because Reactor 3 was a plutonium mixed oxide fuel, it's much more volatile, and that's why you see that kind of discrepancy. So that plume, of course, a complicated removal of the melted dirt, not acknowledging none of this. TEPCO has initiated removal of the spent fuel from some reactors. Why is TEPCO even on the site when it was nationalized right away? It's not a decommissioned authority, and many, many, many of the early headlines, they were calling for TEPCO to be removed. The idea was you blame TEPCO, which was a corporation that can be dissolved, theoretically. Well, it's not a stock market, I guess, but you can blame the corporation rather than the nuclear industry, which is the reason it happened in the first place, because they know all of this was going to happen at some point. And they built those reactors on the tectonic plates, 70 kilometers from the tectonic plates, which is madness. And with a 3,000-year legacy of massive tsunamis, massive earthquakes. So they knew that building the reactors this was the ultimate outcome. The prevailing winds blew it right to North America immediately, covering the entire planet within 30 days. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags, but they didn't stop growing food in a nuclear wasteland. And the fact that he's not wearing his idiot useless paper suit, means it's for sale. This was it at the media, by the way. So the 14 prefectures, this is Tokyo included, and Guma and Chiba, which is right alongside of Tokyo. These are huge metropolitan cities. The food is banned from there by 55 countries in 14 prefectures. That's half the country because these are large prefectures. Well, you should ban the food from the whole country. You should abandon the country, clearly. However, the retrieval of melted fuel debris from Reactor 1, 2, and 3 remain a major hurdle. Well, how come Reactor 4 never gets any acknowledgement? They never acknowledged this. Even though you can go to TEPCO, you can go to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, you can go to the IAEA and find that picture. But yet they'll tell you that never happened. They'll tell you got all the fuel out of the pool. This industry is not acceptable. Any industry that is capable and are in a position, have enough influence to do that, and has no right to exist. It means it's captured your regulatory, your governments, your universities, and your medias. And it has to do that worldwide for the law to work, right? The law can only work if all the medias stab you in the back too. Tonight's a bit of a master class. Like I said, it's not a very long story. But if you're going to challenge every one of the laws, it complicates.
My understanding is on top of what used to be
This is the media pretending they're at the top of the building. How can we quantify that? Don't think of the journalists, don't ignore the fact that they've done it, but don't think it's CBS, it's ABC Australia, it's CNN, it's BBC. Those medias made it happen. It wasn't a journalist. They weren't at Japan. They weren't at Fukushima. They never left the United States, right? They just went to a nuclear plant in the United States and pretended that they were at Fukushima. Because Fukushima is not a game. As detailed in recent reports. Well, what was interesting tonight about this story, every time and they've done this a lot, in recent reports, when you clicked on it, it sent you to this story that got nothing to do with recent reports. They sent you to AIM and Magna, whatever the hell it is, story about cartoons. About some perversion. It's a perverted cartoons for the most part, right? That Japanese men and politicians seem to covet, as detailed in a recent report. Why would you link us over to that for? And you've done that through all the links. TEPCO faces continuous delay owing to unforeseen structural issues, such as cracks and leaks in the containment structure. Well, let's have a look at the buildings. I don't see any cracks or leaks. That's fear-mongering. There's no cracks or leaks there. Everything looks pretty sweet to me. I'd asked one of these guys that worked there, but he's not alive. He died that day. Furthermore, with the management of contaminated water remains a persistent concern, with ongoing debates about its treatment and safe release. It's ongoing treatment, eh? Really? A safe release. When you lost everything in the first 5 days, how does that story work, I wonder? The Fukushima nuclear report was so shocking they decided to treat it as if it didn't even exist. And then the world media, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the so-called water release was cooked up by IAEA, and they partnered with Japan, with South Korea, with Taiwan, and with China, right, to manipulate the Asian population, which is 6 billion people. And so in 2023, August 24th, they had people worldwide protesting tritium-3H instead of the actual releases, which were catastrophic: uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, and many, many other horrific, hideous, monstrous isotopes, right? Yeah. Let me see here. The computer's a little funny. I don't like that at all. Let's just keep going. I'll check the comment section a little bit to see if you're getting any issues. Furthermore, the management of contaminated water remained a persistent concern, with ongoing debates about its treatment and safe release. You're not going to treat anything that came out of the building because it was all gone in 5 days. Like the whole water story, I should really walk you through it, I suppose. Just let me touch on that, because see how we're doing here. I'll start kicking ass here in a bit. I'll start getting my act together here in a bit. Let's do this. Let me just take, all the tanks were built in 2013. And you can fill up the tanks from each reactor 6 times a day. The tanks were built to lull you into complacency and succeeded beyond their wildest imaginations. April 21st, 2014, TEPCO unable to bring contaminated water issues under control. They didn't have the ALP system built until 2015, by the way. The Advanced Liquid Processing Systems, ALP, has yet to function reliably. They didn't even have it finished until 2015. And you couldn't turn it on because you can't filter anthropogenic fuel particulates, because you'll have a chain reaction in the filter and the tanks. You can't fill up the tanks because you have a chain reaction. You can't filter the fuel because the filter will have a chain reaction. You'll have thousands of sieverts in about 20 minutes in the filter. You can't get back in the building. You can't filter it. This was look over here, not over there. You can't contain it. It has to flow into the ocean because the tanks would be at least 1.4 million sieverts of just beta with the numbers, because they acknowledge at least 2.2 sieverts per liter. This was Ariva, the exact same system as the Alps, by the way. 2014, TEPCO to abandon the Ariva system. It was never used. The system was unused and kept out of operation. It was actually never used, despite the fact that they say the Alps system has yet to function reliably. It actually wasn't even built. There was many other things they were trying, like the groundwater bypass operation on the east side was designed to stop water coming down the mountain, catch it, and then pump it directly into the ocean so it didn't flow through the site. That was idiotic to even suggest that could be done. Of course, it never succeeded because it can't be done. They failed to deliver on the promise to install a fence to stop the radiation from going into the ocean because they had people convinced they had it under control, right? Everything was lost in the first week. There was no surviving on that site. They couldn't do anything to mitigate anything. The ice fit, they said it was going to cost $1 billion. You can't build a fence. This is not like keeping your sheep in a field or something. The site is built on shale. It's built on a riverbed. It's been there for millions of years on top of that. It's designed so that everything runs down through the site into the shale. Shale runs down to the riverbed washes it out into the ocean. All the nuclear sites are built with those attributes. That's their oh shit plan, right? TEPCO's ice wall operation not meeting expectations. You know, they had 260,000 people work on the ice wall. 260,000. Really? Well, the money they spent when you divided it, if you didn't buy anything and you didn't spend any money whatsoever, you just gave everybody a paycheck to 260,000 people. That was $1,150 each. 260,000 people. It's absurd to suggest that happened. First off, you got any idea how many paper suits that is every month? What are you talking about? They actually came out, we chastised them so much, I think it was 2016, 2017. They actually came out with a story saying TEPCO incinerated 7,000 paper suits a day on site to try to cover up the big hole in their lie, right? No, you can't work at a nuclear meltdown. 7,000 people were not working on that site. There's not that many homeless available, right? There's not nuclear companies. We never had any evidence whatsoever of anything like that. We have no reports, we have no whistleblowers, we have no interviews, we have no pictures to quantify any of those assertions. As outlined, so furthermore, the management of contaminated water remains a persistent concern with ongoing debates about its treatment and safe release. There is no what do you mean ongoing debates? As outlined in the official report, I think I was going to say, the official updates, which is cartoon perversion. Like, there's your report right there. Look. Hello, everybody. We're at Reactor 4. Simply never happened. As outlined in the official report, which is all the links are linking, all the stories that they're linking to for evidence are linking you over to AIM and Mega, which is cartoon, I'm not going to say the word, but naughty cartoons. Technical and logistical challenges continue to impede the decommissioning efforts of Fukushima's Daiichi. Like, the buildings don't even exist. There is nothing to decommission. They built contraptions over these two buildings to manipulate the population, and I think they took the inventories out of the fuel pools of reactor 3 and 4, right? I bring in a picture of the contraptions. I think I got it. Well, with me, I got so much. There's so much documentation, and these shows only got a short time frame, right? Tell the story. I don't want to. And that picture should have been. It's got to be number 4. Hang on. because we had moved a lot of our... There we go. We'll find it here. If not, we'll have something similar. I'm a little bit confused by that, by the way. Just one more try. Apparently I'm an idiot. There it is. Eventually I'll get all my I's crossed, dotted, my T's crossed. So on top of those two buildings, they put these two contraptions. When you zoom in, and I'm the only one who will show you these two pictures, when you zoom in, you can't download the pictures since I've done this from Japanese websites, government websites. I had downloaded a very high quality picture where I was able to zoom in and capture the actual reality of what was under these contraptions. That's the contraption they built off-site and assembled it. It doesn't physically touch reactor 3, and this is the same thing for reactor 4, right? Underneath those two contraptions, it actually looks like that. But officially, they say they're at the top of the building and got the fuel out of the buildings, out of the stumps. It's complicated, like I said. And, I didn't make it complicated. I'm just trying to articulate it. The difficulties in assessing and stabilizing the highly radioactive melted fuel debris has been a long-standing issue. It ejected the fuel right out of the buildings. Not almost out of the buildings, not a little ways out of the buildings, but right out of the buildings. The fuel, and the rest of them melted down and burned. Like reactor 4 is really interesting because he refused to acknowledge reactor 4 is gone by pretending, and all the universities had to participate in that lie for that lie to work. And we contaminated and poisoned the entire planet. We're watching the extinction event. And if you didn't tell so many lies, we'd be through this story a long time ago, but we've got to keep going. Radioactive xenon, Washington 450 times above detection levels. So imagine what it was like at ground zero. Whoever took that picture would have died that day. Very high concentrations of hot particles, plutonium, americium. And earlier I showed you one of the models of the plutonium covering the entire planet in 20 days. But then it looked like americium-239, right? Or neptunium-239. I can't remember off the top of my head. For some reasons, because like when you do these shows, technically, you're not allowed to make a mistake. Not even a Freudian slip. And let's be honest, how difficult that assertion actually is. Yeah, neptunium. That's an americium, by the way, which decays to plutonium too, by the way. So this decays to plutonium after 2.5 days. So there's 10 decays. So over 25 days, everything is decayed to plutonium. It's already covering the planet. So imagine what it's like to be at ground zero with a fake Geiger counter in a paper suit. Imagine how much they must hate you to do that to you. So there's like ejected, the fuel pool in the reactor cores at the very top of these buildings. Let me show you that depiction because I don't know if I got that in. These are complicated shows, and they took down my site with on BitChute with almost 1,100 presentations. So it stresses you out when that happens to you. I don't know how to explain it, but it's they've done it to me on my other YouTube channels. They were looking for spoilers. They took down the site, and I never got no emails. Both times now. I appealed but I don't know what I'm appealing. Just like, hey, my site's gone. I don't know if you noticed, but I worked super hard. So let me give you a depiction of what the buildings. So the fuel pools are the red ones in the two top corners, and they don't have a repository anywhere on the planet, let alone Japan. So that's where they were storing 3 decades of their inventories. And then they changed the rules so they can put more into the fuel pool than the original charters allowed them to. And the reactor cores at the top of the buildings. Well, that building is only, you see the corner over there, the furthest corner. See how gouged out that is? Well, I don't really need to go into too much great detail, because when I show you this picture, this is what they put that cover over. They covered up the sides, right? But you can see the guts no longer. And now this doesn't physically, the contraption you see, you can't really see it all there, doesn't physically touch the building. And these pictures, this was meant to lull you into complacency that they were doing something, that it was under control. When the building in the background, there wasn't a nuclear scientist on the entire planet, or engineer, or university academic, or alumni, or professor, that looked at that picture and didn't say, oh shit, it's gone. Well, I can guarantee you a couple of days later when they seen this picture, he wasn't a nuclear scientist, and they chose silence. They chose to let the whole planet suffer from incredible illnesses and diseases, not immune deficiencies and injuries. And they built a contraption like this, off-site, assemble it, where they claimed there's people. See that? They're claiming somebody's actually stood up right there. At a plutonium mixed oxide meltdown that cooked off its entire inventory, and 8 reactor cores and the fuel pools were cooked off. Right, so it looks like there's 2 people there and another person up there, and that's going to help them somehow snap that in there. It doesn't work. This was built off-site, and it snaps together through gravity. If that is people there, they're wearing titanium vests and aprons and stuff like that, it's because they don't know what nuclear is, and they would have died that day or that hour. They don't survive that exposures. Despite deploying specialized robots, well, there's your specialized, they're called bio-robots, they're humans. That's what they call them, bio-robots. Rather than say a human's doing it, they'll say, we got a bio-robot, which is a human. So think about the arrogance, that kind of hubris to do something like that. They'll show you pictures like that one over there, which is clearly not it. But this is the actual robot. $48 million. And what it does, it goes like this in the dark and tries to grab something and bring it up. So they got less than a gram. less than a gram employing that technique. Despite deploying specialized robot. That's the actual robot. $48 million. And if that was used, that guy down there couldn't stand up there. He would get a fatal dose. And this is what they done. They dropped it down there. It's just it does this. $48 million. Thank you. It took them 4 years to develop it. Like, it's going down into buildings that don't exist, right? They won't acknowledge that they lost their inventories. Right? They can get their samples out of these buildings. They don't need to go into the other buildings. They're all exact replicas. The idea is to get you fixated on their specialized robot, which is not even a robot. It's bizarre, is what it actually is. Such as cracks and leaks. Do you see any cracks and leaks in these buildings? Well, actually, Dana, the buildings don't exist. Hey, we got a thinker. Leaks in the containment structure. I don't see any leaks in the containment structure. Furthermore, the management of the contaminated water remains a persistent concern with ongoing debates around its treatment and safe releases. The official updates, of course, is going to be AIM. It's going to be cartoons. They're going to send you. Well, they don't link over. They send you all these different links, but they don't link over. That guy died that day. Look. I put that picture there. Additionally, there is significant public concern regarding the environmental impact of treated water releases, which, according to the reports, again, we're just redundancy. I don't know why I done that twice. Same picture. Workers at the site are exposed to high levels of radiation. You know, the homeless, they call them workers, not nuclear academics, nuclear scientists, or nuclear companies, or Bechtel, or whatever. No, workers. You know, the homeless and the destitute, the idiots that gave them that job stole their money too. Because they're not living. Workers, homeless and destitute and victims of society are like, yeah, go over there, squat down in the no-go zone, the no-go zone. And what it's not about this at all. Yeah, it's about getting a picture, but it's about seeing if he drops dead. Right? That's what it's all about. And they have the cranes with the grapplers, so when he drops dead, the crane picks him up, brings him over, drops him in. into a transport truck container. When you get enough dead bodies in there, they'll take it and incinerate it to Yakuza. Necessitating stringent safety protocol and regular health checks. That's probably one of the scariest pictures I ever saw right there. Like, that's the scariest picture. Whoever done that is dead. Dead. Additionally, significant public concern regarding the environmental impact of treated water releases, which according to the reports, the reports right there, when you click on it, that's what you get. Well, here's my report. The species to your left are what they look like in 2011. The species to the right is what they look like the next number of years. They're gone. And we launched emergency research expeditions for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean without coming home. And like everything else, I've been, my website doesn't exist anymore. I just can't keep it up anymore. I can't keep up with, what they've done to me is absurd to try to get rid of me. And I'm pretty sure it's just, a few people standing by me, and the rest of it is pure luck that I'm still here. I'm probably one of the luckiest people I know in order to be still existing and telling this story with all the stuff. I have multiple gag orders from the Canadian courts for up to 3.5 years at a time. So we done research expeditions all the way to Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. The species to your left are exterminated. We provided GPSs of all these places. If you didn't take down my other sites, you would find all those research expeditions. They deleted, they burned the books, all my books on that one. The reports, you click on the link and it gives you this. In response to these multifaceted challenges to the Japanese government, so all I'm trying to do is I read stories, and if they irk me enough, I'll come out and challenge the lies. And I'll try to hopefully do a pretty good job, and you won't fall for the lies, right? The idea is to show you the evidence that is clearly a lie. Whoever done that died that day. It's absurd. That green regions you're seeing there, they're spraying that because the fuel particulates are splitting atoms. And they're just trying to keep the doses down enough so that the homeless are not dropping dead in front of everybody. Because that's been a bit of a problem, right? A lot of the homeless get skittish when they see their homeless drinking buddies dropping dead, right? At one point, it was 16,000 people walked away. Severe working conditions. Yeah, I think that's severe working conditions. I think that's appropriate. Are collaborating to enhance their decommissioning strategy. TEPCO and the Japanese government. Why isn't Toshiba, why isn't the reactor makers in charge? Why is a non-decommissioned authority like TEPCO, the least likely, who has a lot to gain by not doing a job and a lot to lose by exposing the reality, has everything to lose? Why would you leave them in charge of the most dangerous job in human history? Why is it only the homeless, destitute, victims of society, immigrants who don't speak the language are the employees? And why are they called workers instead of nuclear academics or nuclear engineers or nuclear scientists? Why are these, the major media, pretending this is a fraction of, pretending on top of a building that doesn't even exist? And why is the world pretending that building is perfect, in perfect condition? Why is all the universe, so for that law here behind me to work, all the universities and all your medias worldwide, all the key government agencies, EPA and everybody else, had to participate in that law worldwide for that law to work. You couldn't come out and challenge it. I've been showing this picture for 12 years. And I showed it every show. And I've done over 3,000 presentations on top of that and 600 radio interviews. Blog interviews and everything else. All that got scrubbed from the internet by now, I'm pretty sure. My other Dana Durnford channel that had 3,000 videos almost on it from the research expeditions. There was a lot of short stuff, right? And that's all got deleted in increments. I had 300 taken down with a court order. Because I'm a horrible person, clearly. Because I care about the species, I care about the people, I care about the planet, I care about the water in particular. I love water. Water is your friend. If you poison the water, you poison everything on the planet. They poisoned all the water on the planet. Non-stop for 80 years, and Fukushima was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. In this case, it broke 8 million species' backs. Cutting edge robotics, we follow this constantly. This is the cutting edge robotics, and his job was to get less than a gram. That's what it got out. In fact, I'm going to play. There's a song called "Less Than a Gram" about that. It's by James Lucid. You'll see him in the comments section sometimes if he's not busy. We're going to play that song. Try that again. Okay, I gotta go do it the other way. That was weird. Just give me 1 second. I just need to give my voice a little break here too. Okay, 495. No worries, we'll get that up and running here now. There we go. It's a fantastic song. It's a short song, Less Than a Gram, by James Lucid on YouTube. It's called Less, L-E-S-S, Than a Gram, which is what they got out of the reactors for $48 million, reactor 2, right? Be right back.
Right beside old Unit 3 sits a shell-marked waste you see. Tanks of resin stacked with care, holding what the pumps caught there. TEPCO field 2 plans to show. One says yes, the other no. Each awaits a coming call. Neither clears the path at all. So they say, when the work might get underway. Decommission down the line, mid-century's hopeful sign. 880 tons remain, none retrieved from 3's domain. They debate what space to claim, still the Buildington stays the same. From Unit 2, a careful shot, not from 3, not from 4. Still they work around the door, less than a gram. Still asking
Oh, we never had audio on. Shit. I took the headphones off. I never had the audio turned up. Sorry about that, folks. Let me go backwards. So, $48 million to make this contraption, to get a sample. And when you link, they always link you over to the AIM. We'll just go through everything I just skipped through. You could read it all anyway. And suggesting that they're going to get, why couldn't you get samples out of those buildings? Why did you have to spend 4 years building a stupid, useless, idiotic contraption like that? Yeah, I didn't have the audio. Hi, everybody. Sound. I didn't have the comments up there, right? Because they're awesome, but I get distracted if I start looking. And so I look once in a while, but I don't. It's generally closed up, right? So it looks like this here. And because if I'm reading the comments, I notice I get pretty distracted. That's okay. Just keep rolling. That's all we can do. Progress. We're still trying to get through this story, the single story. We're telling this single story for an hour and 10 minutes. Let's try to get through. Progress has been slower than, well, we're only challenging the lies. They told so many lies. It's taken us an hour and 10 minutes to get this far. And we still got a little bit to go. Yeah, there's a little bit more to go on this story. It wouldn't be so long, right, if they didn't tell a lie in every sentence. Progress has been slower than anticipated, exacerbated by the high radiation levels in the structurally compromised environments. Does that look like it's compromised environments, or it looks like what it actually is they lost the inventories, ejected it right out of the buildings? And the meltdown's done the same thing. All of it was done in 6 days. 6 days, the entire inventories were lost of 4 buildings. And it could be the common spent fuel pools I showed you at the beginning, and reactor 6 is also might have to be put into this equation. It should be because of the evidence. Send us people who don't mind dying. So clearly they're not talking to Harvard or Yale or Stanford or Oxford or MIT or Berkeley, University of California, or any other institutions, right? They're not talking to Bechtel or Sellafield or Windscale or whatever you want to call it, or any of the big nuclear decommission authorities on the planet. They're not talking to any of them. You know, Chris Singh, I can't remember the name of his company now. That's a bit of a blessing. Has never volunteered to go down there and decommission Fukushima. And show you, this is 60 minutes when inside the plant. Dr. Ben Hurd's stance. Now, we've done a video on him about this back, but they took my other YouTube channel down that had 1,500 videos, presentations left on it. And yesterday they took down my BitChute backup channel with 1,100 presentations on it. So now we only got this one. I got to find another site now, start uploading all these videos that we're currently producing on top of that, so that they're available. Past mishandlings have left many in the community wary of the official statements regarding safety transparency, according to the article. So I want you to think about this for 1 second. Past mishandlings have left many in the community wary of the official statements regarding the safety and the transparency. And they link you to an article that is gone back to a cartoon. As per the information highlighted by the SC Shimbu, this is major media, that never puts the word nuclear in their headline. They only put the N word there, like the letter N rather. When you go there, this is what you, when you link to all the stories, this is what you get. No matter which link they're talking about, it goes to this one only. I was looking forward to reading that stuff, right? And scrutinizing it. and then even challenging it if they were lying. Transparency and innovation in these water management approaches are crucial to rebuilding public trust and ensuring environmental safety. Ensuring trust and environmental safety. Like, how can they even utter those particular words? It's a little confusing. Let me do this for a second. Officials admit a deadly Fukushima meltdown cover-up. The TEPCO president relied about the meltdowns. It was a cover-up, and it's a grave issue. It's an unprecedented nuclear disaster, about as bad as it can get, and it's an unpardonable breach of trust. Japan Foreign Minister stopped claiming the food is safe, 2011. Damn it, the whole country. Nuclear expert, which is, was banned for a decade by 55 countries in half the country. Worst case scenario was abandoned in Tokyo. The reason they didn't abandon Tokyo is because they said reactor 4 didn't melt down. That's why they didn't abandon. But clearly it did. There was 9 reactor cores. Same thing with reactor 3, 9 reactor cores. But they were ejected right out of the building on camera. And they have better quality videos. They've never released it. They won't release the video of number 4 because officially number 4 is in perfect shape. And they got all the fuel out of the pool at the top of a building that don't even exist. Nuclear expert, the worst case scenario was abandoning Tokyo, 36 million people, metropolitan Tokyo. Japan Times column, as the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time, the truth will come out about Fukushima. As the public gets sick worldwide. To work at Fukushima is equivalent to being given an order to die, says a radiation expert. Anywhere at Fukushima, Daiichi plant, is equivalent to be given an order to die. And then they're robbed of their pay because they're not going to survive. The money doesn't go to their family, and they're not even acknowledged as being dead. $190 taxi ride for workers to get home from free medical clinic. The workers, the homeless that are working there, are averaging $11 US a day. The rest of the money is stolen by the gangs and the bosses because the majority of them will die. And they're homeless and destitute and victims of society. They're kept as prisoners. When they get sick, they're discharged. They're thrown away like paper towels. The government and industry authorities continue to advocate for nuclear power as a component of Japan's future energy strategy, particularly in light of its climate commitments. As detailed in the article, I'll click on the article, I'm going to send you back to that one. In accordance, and I don't expect anybody to actually read this, and the ones that are reading it are the industry themselves, and they get a great kick out of that each time. In accordance with perspective, and no one gets to print this article unless the IAEA signs off on everything in the article, including those links. In accordance with perspective shared by experts analyzing the situation, so they link you over to another one, analyzing the situation, back to this same link again. And the deployment of advanced robotics, well, we know what they are, less than a gram. $48 million 4 years later. Chernobyl happened, Windscale happened, right? Santa Susana happened, which was equal to 460 Three Mile Islands meltdown releases. But, it's 3 Mile Islands, the United States' greatest accident, not Santa Susana, which, of course, Rocketdyne site is the greatest nuclear meltdown. Not counting Sellafield, where they dumped the equivalent of a 450 billion gallons of radioactive sludge that was dehydrated. Every gram of it is splitting atoms forever and ever and ever. On a number you can't even imagine. I can't. If I can't, you probably can't. Maybe you can, I don't know, but I can't. And I've been at it for 24 years. They built an aquarium, basically. If you built an aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, wrapped it around the entire planet, they dumped that in on-line trenches at Hanford, which is downhill to the Columbian River, which feeds around 24,000 farms downstream of this radioactive nightmare. To say the industry shouldn't exist is an understatement. And there's no need for nuclear. We have geothermal. If we put 1/1,000th of the resources as we're putting into small modular reactors and fusion into geothermal, you would never look at gas, oil, and coal and nuclear again, ever. You would just go ahead and have everything up and running in the next 5 years worldwide. And the proof is, like, solar is great for storing energy. And you can store energy in many different ways. Lava rocks, you can store 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures for months. And it's cheap. There's tons of it everywhere. But you can get fresh stuff too, right? Because it's always getting lava. And if you use sand, you can store 700, 800 degree Fahrenheit temperatures for 3 to 4 weeks. And if you used mine shafts, you can compress air down there. And you can reclaim the heat, and put it in sand or lava rocks. And then you can unpack, when you're ready to unpack the compressed air to expand it rapidly to produce power. And they do this on a very large scale, by the way. You can have that, so it's a 90% efficiency. And you can do over 300 cycles a year of storage from just any of those systems. Batteries, why would you do batteries when you have much better, cheaper, less resource intensive abilities, right? And the deployment of advanced robotics to handle the most dangerous task. There is no robotics at Fukushima or anywhere else. There is none. The perceived opacity, the deceit, and past mishandlings of information have exasperated public distrust. No, it's perpetual lies. Efforts to address the concerns involved increasing transparency through public briefing discussions, as reported by another link. And you go over that one and you get the AIM Magna Publishers story again. So none of the links are, and they got all kinds of different links, different evidence, and all of them send you to a cartoon that is a perversion. Moreover, experts have pointed out the decommissioning process poses a significant environmental risk, particularly in the event of a natural disaster that could compromise storage facilities or containment measures. So if you have an earthquake, these buildings are incredibly fragile, by the way. And you put contraptions over it and pretend they got into it, but that didn't, that wasn't real. And so the buildings really are very precarious. They're not able to withstand, and they're just 70 kilometers from the tectonic plates. It's the equivalent of building them on the tectonic plates, right? So under the covers, the buildings will always look like that. So when you have an earthquake, you can have a chain reaction. You can't pour water over that. You're sucking up fuel particulates. You can't put that in tanks because the fuel particulates will gather up on the bottom of it, like happened in Mayak, for instance, right? And the tank will melt down. Or it'll just burn a hole like it did at Hanford. So Hanford has 177 300,000 gallon tanks. Well, that same stuff they dumped in 41 miles of on-line trenches would be equal to 1.4 million of those 300,000 gallon tanks. So they got everybody talking about, oh, well, we got 177 tanks. That's the worst of the worst. Now, if we can figure out how to seal that in glass, We can store it for millions of years. Well, if you put it in titanium, it's expensive, right? And it's going to be the same as glass. The Wigner effect, the gamma shines, the neutron bombardment, the beta rays, the alpha shines, will break down the integrity of titanium and glass within a decade or so anyway. The idea of glass was just cheap, and it was something new, so most people didn't know how to respond to that. And there was nobody going to call them out on it. We'll be the only people that ever call them, like a handful of us, that's it. We'll bring any kind of rationale to the equation. Despite these efforts, it's highlighted by the Shimbu media. Of course, you know what that's going to send you to. It's absurd, all the evidence. Incredible story, right? This story is the industry panicking. That's in response to the panic in the industry, this incredible story coming out, and I'm not sure who they were targeting with this story. The fear of unforeseen accidents remains a prevalent concern among the citizens. The citizens, which is a derogatory term for you and me and everybody else on the planet. And there's more to the planet than citizens, by the way. There's 8 million species. When you look at reactor 3, for instance, do you really think this is a 190-foot building? Do you really think that 150 feet up in the air there's pools? Storage pools full of reactor cores and a reactor core? Does anybody really believe that? The pro-nuclear will say, but they don't. They know it's not true. The apologists for the industry are out there in all your schools and universities and government agencies and everywhere else, in the media. But they know it's not there. And because just hang on a second. It's madness, right? It's madness that we have to come out and challenge these stories because nobody else will. And it's madness that their ideology is a fantasy based on the most lethal attack upon our planet in history. We've never been attacked as effectively as this industry has attacked us. We can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it. None of the species have autoimmune triggers to defend against it. No human has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. I go back to here. It's an extinction event. And the industry has no problem exterminating everything for whatever purpose. Well, it's not like, I've heard a lot of rude people talk about, well, there's too many humans on the planet. Well, this wipes out every species. Not just humans. They go first, for the most part. And there's endless diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries from radiation. There's an endless amount. Necessitating ongoing communication safety assurance. Specialized robots. Requires the development. If you haven't developed technology after 80 years to deal with it, then you can't. Or you would have, see? Because there's money to be made. And not like they don't have the funds. And when you show us this, you claim this is your robot. That's the only robot that they got. And it does nothing. Less than a gram in 4 years. That's what it's retrieved. It's not about decommissioning. It's only about getting a sample and distracting the population. It's not about getting a sample either. It's about distracting the population because the samples exist all over the world from the explosions, right? Like they have lots of samples, okay? specialized robots, and remove the melted fuel debris that was removed when the explosions. And whatever's left, yeah, there is melted debris left, but like reactor 1 and 2, a lot of that went China syndrome, so-called, deep into the earth. There's no getting that back. That's being flushed out into the Pacific all day, every day. The intricate operation is expected to span decades with an estimated timeline of 30 to 40 years. Like the typical decommissioning of a normal reactor that didn't melt down is 60 years. Holtec could do it in 5 years probably because they just dump it wherever you're not looking. An estimated timeline of 30 to 40 years. Well, how are you going to do multiple nuclear reactor meltdowns in 30 or 40 years when you can't do like a so-called safe cold shutdown in 60 years? Read more there. Of course, every time you read more there, it sends you over to that one. About cartoons. None of the links are legit. In response to these challenges, both TEPCO and the Japanese government are committed to increasing transparency, improving public communication. Well, like they don't show you that picture in their stories. The reason being is because the story doesn't work anymore. TEPCO can't have a press briefing to the population and show that picture and say everything is all right. Because nobody's going to believe that, right? Even the stupidest ones won't believe it when they see that. There's very few dissenting voices, and I'm being erased by the looks of it. In response to these challenges, both TEPCO and the Japanese governments have committed to increasing transparency. Why is TEPCO in the equation? How did TEPCO become the arbiter of facts? The company is the last one that should be left in charge. Why would you leave the company in charge for? These are nuclear meltdowns that are wiping out our planet. Why are you putting a company with no abilities whatsoever, has to come up with everything from scratch, instead of the big companies? Because the big companies are not going there. Nuclear scientists are not going there. Nuclear universities are not going to Fukushima. They're not welcomed anyway. Japan's not going to let them in there because some of the students will be taking pictures and they won't be able to survive the truth. The United States was hit with extremely large peaks of Fukushima radioactive fallout, significant amount of plutonium released for months. Now, this was a continuous plume covering the entire planet. Radioactivity from the plant was measured globally and blanketed the entire northern hemisphere. And that's an understatement. And it never goes away, ever. And I'll show you a depiction of what they mean by blanketed. Well, this is the French government based on 31 days. So the plume is coming out of Japan. You're at day 10, right here. Day 15. You're at day 20 right now. The whole planet is covered in radioactive fallout of 1 million to at least 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air of cesium-137. For every cesium-137, there's 100 times more strontium-90. So cesium will also aggregate in your thyroid and your heart, so you expect to see massive heart attacks. Death by heart attacks should increase everywhere, worldwide, for every species, not just humans. And then you would expect to see autoimmune illnesses manifest. You would expect to see heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia, skyrocket. So we covered the whole planet. This is the French government of cesium-137, 1 million, 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. Cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet at the speed of light, almost at the speed of light each second. So that wrecks your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells, permanent lesions to the organs of every species, and you can't escape it. And so at the same time, it's 100 times strontium-90. So basically what you're talking about just with those two isotopes and that kind of quantity, you're talking about every insect, every animal, every bird, every whale, every species on the planet, and every human on the planet producing radioactive hormones and radioactive stem cells for the rest of their lives. And for the young species in humans, which are developing and dependent upon the hormones to regulate the function of their bodies and the stem cells to grow their bodies and regenerate their bodies, rejuvenate their bodies, and right, and the dominant force in development of their bodies they're not meant to run on that kind of element, right? Nobody on the planet, no species on the planet has an autoimmune trigger to defend against man-made radiation. Efforts are being made to rebuild trust with the public, particularly among the communities still affected by the radiation disaster, rather. Efforts are being made to rebuild trust. So what we're seeing here is an acknowledgement that they have no trust, and that the only way they can move forward is in their eyes, and that's the reason the story exists, is because they need to rebuild trust. So this is basically to tell the medias and certain entities that they need to concentrate on rebuilding trust. And the community is still affected by the disaster. Like, radiation doesn't go away. You don't go back into a nuclear wasteland. The nuclear industry will trick you to go back there so it looks like it's safe and trick other people into coming back by proxy. But that's genocide. And omnicide, because you wipe out all the species worldwide. You destroy the bacteria, the fungus in all your fields and meadows and forests. And by proxy, then you're going to destroy the biota. So you can expect to see a massive increase worldwide of flash floods. And because everything's so tender dry, because you don't have, the earth is not soaking up the water because it doesn't have the biota, the fungus, the bacteria anymore because of the radioactive fallout. Then you would expect to see, when you get lightning strikes, incredible forest fires because the litter and the foliage is not breaking down because you don't have the biota, the fungus, the bacteria to retain the water and do that particular job anymore. That cycle of life, a soup of life. So now you expect forest fires to be brutal because the foliage and the litter that doesn't break down shouldn't exist. When it gets struck by lightning, you get these sparks, these huge chunks floating around that shouldn't exist. So they travel very long distances. And they have a lot of energy, right, because they're tender dry. And so when they land, they start another forest fire in that same cycle, that leapfrogging effect of the foliage and litter that shouldn't even exist because of the biota, if it didn't get wiped out in the bacteria and the fungus, which is what happened in Chernobyl, by the way. Free app to show visitors Fukushima recovery efforts 2016. I remember when I grabbed that headline there, how upset I was about it. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags in a nuclear waste bin. It's hard to comprehend, I get that, for a person, how 4 buildings can cause the carnage that I'm talking about. I get that. I totally understand that. That's why I'm here constantly, to help reinforce it, to help remind you. An unusual amount of smoke billowing from reactor 3 and 4, nothing to be concerned about, says TEPCO, which is not a nuclear expert or a nuclear decommission authority. So there was smoke coming out of reactor 3 and 4 in May 11th. Just let me find a picture from that era. They say, oh no, it's all good. So the cover-up, by the way, was right away, which is hard. It's heartbreaking that the industry is able to do that. And it's heartbreaking that they know they're wiping out all the species, and they're only concerned about them. They don't give a shit about humanity. They can't come up with solutions because then they have to admit they got a problem. So this was the building originally. So when you say there's nothing to concern about because there's still a chain reaction going on in the inventories that are left, clearly the majority of the inventory was gone. It's pretty dishonest. Like, this is not a game. They got away with it for 14 years. It's not acceptable. I mean, they destroyed my reputation worldwide. That's destroyed now. Right? That's called Operation Long Jump. You'll find, if you go, we're in the live video section right now. If you go into the video section, we actually recorded them saying how they're going to destroy me with Operation Long Jump and who's going to help them. These short videos there. Regular updates, public briefings have been instituted to provide transparency. Like, transparency would be to show us that and say, yeah, it's all gone. That's transparency. Unless you're going to do that, then you have no credibility. And and of course, you're never going to do that. Even though that's the official pictures from their website, they refuse to acknowledge that's the official pictures. Have been instituted to provide transparency. There is no transparency. To reassure residents of the safety measures being taken as the decommissioning progresses. Like, you lost the inventories in 6 days, all of it. Which is an absurd amount compared to what's going to be left behind, right? Has been lost. And so what they're talking about is just they're promoting the cover story. They're telling you the cover story in that particular story that sadly we're still talking about. However, public skepticism remains due to past controversies. Find out more at 45% of the kids in Fukushima survey had thyroid exposures to radiation, 50 millisieverts per year equivalent for a 1-year-old. These are absurd numbers, by the way. And they're only talking about gamma. Find out more details at cartoons. Why are you always linking us to the cartoons? So we're not going to get through all of this because it'll take forever. I think it was 160 lies in this story. 160. Addressing climate change imperatives. Climate change was a huge part of this story. And whenever they link you, they were linking you over to this same story over and over. And so I'll just slowly get through the rest of it because we're at the end of the night. I'm not going to bother trying to articulate it. But it'll be there for you in case you want to audit what I'm talking about. Like 35,000 microsieverts. Just a couple of anthropogenic man-made atoms in your thyroid is brutal. Because it pulses energy at the speed of light every second. It wrecks the chromosomes. It wrecks your hormones too, right? Because it's in the thyroid. Yeah, the industry is disgusting, unfortunately. And they know it. They only hire like-minded people. They can only exist in absolute secrecy. Right? They have no legitimate reason for existing outside of they captured your universities and your medias and key positions in your governments during the Manhattan Project. They've never let go the throat of your country since. And to suggest that nuclear is going to lower carbon is absurd. It's absurd. Everything they tell you is absurd compared to what the truth actually is. Continuing reading at the Magna Publishers. Can benefit the global nuclear industry. Nearly 1 million cancers from Fukushima in Japan over the next 20 years. That was prediction 22nd of December 2011. But by 2012, there was actually 865,000 cancers already diagnosed. Not everybody was diagnosed. Not everybody has health care, by the way. It's not just cancer. There's heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline issues. Concern about safety, transparency, and public trust remains at the forefront. Nobody trusts the nuclear industry. You can never get people to trust the nuclear industry because they roll out the most unlikable, untrustworthy, most distant from being a human creatures we've ever seen. Professor, do not examine the Fukushima children for health problems because it's likely to cause harm. Abnormalities would be found leading to unnecessary tests. Like 99% of the professors are there to protect the industries. That's their job. They're willing to come out and tell a lie to protect the industries that are more important than the 8 million species. Sources say about 1,000 kinds of radioactive material released from the reactors, about 1,000 types of isotopes. TEPCO 2012. Frozen water ruptured pipes at Fukushima plant. Cooling system stop at the spent fuel pool number 4. Well, there's number 4. The spent fuel pool is 150 feet above that stump there. They're invisible. Right, so they roll out these headlines to keep the lie alive. They're still doing that today. Many people expressed skepticism towards TEPCO. No, hate. And instead, you should be hating the nuclear regulatory commissions, the IAEA, UNSCEAR, ERPA, the IPRC, UN. Stanford, were TV experts paid to say Fukushima Daiichi had a small leak when it was the largest in the world? You ejected 9 reactor cores right out of one building, sure. Right, the 2 spent fuel pools were ejected right out of the building. I played the video earlier tonight for everybody. And then they want to link you over to naughty cartoons when you get there as a distraction, say, to get you away. It's very popular in Japan, say, that those types of cartoons, right? Hard cases. Health environmental impacts of the treated water. You can't treat water when it doesn't even exist anymore. You can't filter, you can't treat this type of... When you pour water over, it's not water anymore. And water is your best friend on this planet. 8 million species are dependent upon it to survive. If you don't have water, you look like the moon. You're the same as carbon. You don't have carbon, you look like the moon. We have destroyed our water on the planet, fresh and salt. We're 80 years of emissions, but Fukushima was a massive, absurd pulse event. Okay, I'm just going to flash through the rest of it because I'll start talking and we'll never get through it. And that's not cool. But it'll be there in case you want to see it later. These are all the lies. I was ready to challenge every lie. And I think there was 160 lies altogether in a single story. In a single story. In a single story, around 160 lies. And I probably passed a few because it was mind-numbing. Like I said, that 2 hours ago, it's only a short story. It won't take us too long to get through it all. This is how evil the industry is always like this, eh? It's an evil industry. And this is what I got to get through in order to show you the other side of their story. Each lie, I have to challenge each lie. And what I'm showing you tonight and what I've done so far tonight was to challenge every lie. But I can't keep that up all night. I need a 24-hour TV station of this. I need a bunch of people like mine to get out here for 3 or 4 hours at a time and try to cover the 24-hour news cycle each day. You would need, in order to counter the lies, you're going to need a 24-hour show dedicated to exposing the 24-hour news cycle lies. The industry lives on perpetual lies. It only exists because it has an overwhelming amount of lies and control. Like, the evidence I have is unassailable. It's incontestable. It's extremely documented. And they say it doesn't exist, but yet here it is. And if you watch my last 2 shows, my last show was really good. The one before that was excellent. It was another master class, different than this tonight, where we go through a hell of a lot of studies to show you they know everything. And I mean everything about radioactive fallout. They know everything. And Arnie Gunnison and Helen Caldicott lied to you. They're pro-nuclear disguised as anti-nuclear. Helen Caldicott wrote 14 anti-nuclear books, but she's not who you think she is. I can tell you that much. She's a terrible person. And so their story that they wrote is desperation. That story was based on desperation. I don't know what the idea of the I've never seen a story like that before. And you can see the story is written by somebody who's very articulated in the industry, who knows just what to say. So it's really highly suspect that this came from the International Atomic Energy Agency. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is not independent at all. They're appointed by each administration to protect the nuclear industry, which is more important. Like, it's not illegal to poison you with radiation. That's the only reason your loved ones are dying massive all day, every day, worldwide in your hospitals from radiation poisoning. If it was illegal to poison you with radiation, you couldn't poison millions of people every day, kill them with radiation in your hospitals worldwide. Your nuclear industry is committing genocide worldwide every day through your hospitals. If you go back 2 videos, not my last one before, I provide you with that documentation. And it's complicated, but we go through everything methodically. And so I got to get another backup site up and running. So I couldn't get through all of this tonight. Look at this. It never stops. This is the same story. You can't get through it. You can't cover all the lies in a single story. What does that tell you about this industry? It's hideous. It has to lie to survive. It really is. The biggest threat to humanity and 8 million species are the emissions from 1,000 fuel pools worldwide all day, every day. The fuel pools are still splitting atoms. They're perpetual machines. They're breeders. They have poisoned our entire planet. They compromise the future of humanity. And we have condemned now the 8 million species. That's not maybes. So now I had over 1,100 videos on BitChute, and that's gone. 578 had my name on the videos. That's absurd. I'm not going anywhere. It's definitely going to take a while for me to get over a blow like that. But that's what we got to do. We got no choice but to keep trying. Nobody's ever run an educational program. So, and big shout out to James Lucet, the man who provides the music here. He went all in this week and donated another $340 to the cause. So we ordered in a bunch of gear, and I'm taken care of now pretty well for the rest of the month. I got all the supplies again. And we got a bunch of gear coming in this week for the studio and for the operation. So that's a big deal for me. I'm just enormously thankful and humbled. I wish other people would help so that we can, because we are struggling to survive now, right? And they're taking me apart piece by piece. I've been at this a long time, and I'm never giving up. And all you're gonna do is just make me become more articulated by doing that to me. You're just gonna make sure my resolve is, I don't know if my resolve could be any more committed than I am now, but doing that to me has given me a new hatred for the industry. I'm here because I'm supposed to be here, and I ain't going anywhere. So I know James posted another song. We started off, that was an amazing song. We're probably going to play that one again after, but he's got a new song out. Our poll, we're going to close that in about 3 or 4 minutes. Should we stop letting Japan and the nuclear industry murder our planet with radioactive fallout? Hell yeah. James got another song. I think it's a song, because he's very rare, but sometimes he'll do, like, he'll give you an insight into the nuclear workers and operators. And that's some fascinating stuff that we never get to see anyway. But he also really, like, we played that one there in 1957. What an amazing song that was. That was wonderful. We're going to play that song after this video. I'll be back for that. See you in a few minutes.
to moan. Free path, valve exposed, feed line cracked, containment route. Held no lock, seal drifted in. Pressure shock, no pair check, no lockout left. Heat rerouted, core on cap, handle free. Galleons lost, system burns at base cost. Reactor isolation fault. Bypass light and misfire rain. One valve. System slain. Rear breach with form erased, no torque fix. Wrench discarded, no dual eye. Refuel closes with standby light. Pathway gate, status gray. Manual call, send delay. No torque pin, no hand confirmed. Surveillance off, reactor degraded. Look fails, suppression. Isolation fault. Core expands. Intake cold. Release chamber. Wide deploy. Spec tunnel foul. In the lifted position. Core. Warp. System flips. Seal void. Gate open. Heat deploy.
I like that. Death metal. And he put out a total different genre yesterday. We're going to play that, 1957. We'll see everybody tomorrow night, same time. Take care.
In 57 the shield was signed. JFK.